The ice sheets of Europa stretched endlessly before Dr. Amara Sullivan as she guided the exploration rover through another sweep of the Moon's fractured surface. After 6 months of methodical scanning, most of her team had settled into a routine of quiet resignation. The Jupiter Research Station had promised discoveries, but so far, they'd found nothing but ice and more ice. "Thermal scan complete for grid section E-17, announced Dr. Thomas Reed, his Scottish accent thick with fatigue. "Moving on to, wait." He leaned closer to his console, frost-white eyebrows furrowing. "Amara, are you seeing this?" The thermal readout showed something impossible, a perfect geometric pattern of heat signatures, 2 kilometers beneath the ice. Not the random thermal vents they'd been cataloging, but a deliberate array of energy sources, each pulsing in precise intervals. Recording confirmed anomaly at coordinates 15.7 degrees north, 142.3 degrees east, Dr. Jamal Hassan added, his fingers flying over the controls. The Egyptian geophysicist had been skeptical of finding anything beyond microorganisms in Europa's subsurface ocean. Now his dark eyes were wide with excitement. The discovery sparked a frenzy of activity across the station. Within hours, they'd deployed their full array of scanning equipment, building a comprehensive picture of what lay beneath. The structure, there was no other word for it, spread across 3 cubic kilometers, its architecture unlike anything human engineers had conceived. "It's not just alien," Amara announced during the emergency brief to Earth Command, her dark skin illuminated by the holographic display of their findings. "It's abandoned. The energy signatures we're detecting are residual, like backup systems running on minimal power." "How long has it been there?" General Laura Zhang's hologram asked, her expression carefully neutral. "Based on ice core analysis?" Jamal consulted his data. "At least 50,000 Earth years. The structure is wrapped in some kind of field that prevented the ice from crushing it, but it's clearly been dormant for millennia." The next week saw the arrival of specialized drilling equipment and a team of engineers led by Dr. Dmitry Volkov, a burly Russian with more degrees in exotic materials than most people had pairs of socks. They began the delicate process of cutting through Europa's ice sheet without destabilizing the surrounding area. "Whatever they built down there," Dmitry observed, watching the drill's progress, "they meant it to last. These energy readings shouldn't be possible after so much time." The breakthrough came on day 9 of drilling. The team had just reached the outer barrier of the structure when their equipment detected an active response. The field protecting the alien facility recognized their presence and began to adapt, creating a safe passage through the ice. "It's like it was waiting for someone to find it," Thomas breathed, watching the readings. "Look at these protocols. It's not just responding to our presence, it's actively accommodating us." As they descended through the tunnel, their floodlights revealed surfaces that seemed to defy physics. The walls rippled with patterns that changed as they watched, the material itself restructuring to maintain structural integrity. The first chamber they entered took their breath away. Vast columns of what appeared to be crystalline material stretched from floor to ceiling, each one thrumming with a deep, barely audible resonance. Holographic displays flickered to life around them, responding to their presence with streams of alien data. "This isn't just a research station," Amara realized, studying the patterns. "It's a prototype. They were trying to build something here, something massive." She gestured to the central array, where the crystals formed a complex geometric pattern. "This is only a small-scale version of whatever they were attempting." Jamal's handheld scanner beeped urgently. "These crystals, they're not just power sources. They're quantum computational matrices. Each one is more powerful than all of Earth's quantum computers combined." "But why abandon it?" Thomas wondered aloud, his scanner probing the facility's systems. "Everything here is intact. It's like they just walked away in the middle of." He stopped abruptly, staring at his readings. "Oh. Oh my." The others gathered around his display. The alien text scrolling across it had been automatically translated by their AI systems. Project terminated due to fundamental spatial violations. Continuation deemed impossible by High Council. Facility sealed until theoretical barriers can be overcome. They hit a wall, Dmitri said, running his hand along one of the crystal columns. Found something their science said couldn't be done and gave up. Amara felt a smile spreading across her face as she looked around the chamber. Humanity had a long history of achieving the impossible, usually by simply refusing to accept that it was impossible in the first place. Well, she said, already composing her report to Earth Command in her head, I suppose we'll have to figure out what they couldn't. The team spent the next 3 days documenting everything they could about the facility. Each new discovery raised more questions than answers, but one thing became clear: the aliens had been attempting to create something that violated their understanding of physics, a way to manipulate spacetime itself. Their mathematics is beautiful, Thomas marveled, reviewing the facility's databases. Perfect, elegant, precise, and completely wrong. He pulled up a holographic model of the theoretical framework. They assumed the universe works according to absolute rules. But we know better. Quantum mechanics tells us reality is messier than that. As Amara watched her team work, she couldn't help but feel a sense of destiny. Humanity had spent centuries looking up at the stars, wondering if we were alone. Now they'd found proof of alien intelligence, and their first discovery was something the aliens themselves had deemed impossible. Dr. Sullivan, General Zhang's hologram appeared in their makeshift command center. Your preliminary reports are intriguing. How confident are you that this technology can be understood? Amara looked around at her team, Jamal analyzing crystal structures, Thomas deep in alien mathematics, Dmitri already sketching modifications to their equipment. Each of them represented humanity's relentless drive to push boundaries, to question assumptions, to find ways around seemingly insurmountable obstacles. General, she replied, I think the real question is, how quickly can you get us more resources? Because we're not just going to understand this technology. She smiled, feeling the weight of history in her next words. We're going to finish what they started. 6 months after the discovery, Europa Research Station had transformed into humanity's most ambitious scientific endeavor. Dr. Viktor Petrov stood in the newly constructed quantum lab, watching holographic models dance through the air as his international team tackled what they'd come to call the Europa paradox. The aliens weren't trying to break physics, he explained to the assembled group, his weathered hands gesturing at the crystalline structures they'd replicated. They were attempting to bend it into a new shape entirely. Dr. Zara Patel, their lead quantum theorist from India, nodded in agreement. Their goal was to create a controlled fold in spacetime, using these quantum matrices as anchor points. She manipulated the hologram, showing the intricate network of energy patterns. But they hit a fundamental barrier in their calculations. The barrier in question had consumed their best minds for months. The alien mathematics predicted that any attempt to create the spacetime fold would result in a cascade failure, destroying the entire system. Their equations were perfect, their logic flawless, and yet something felt off about their conclusions. We're missing something, Victor muttered, not for the first time. He ran his fingers through his gray-streaked hair, studying the alien calculations that now covered entire walls of the lab. Their math assumes the universe operates like a perfect machine, but quantum mechanics tells us it's more like a jazz improvisation, finished Dr. Marcus Williams, a theoretical physicist from Nigeria who had been quietly contemplating the problem. Look at how they tried to control every variable, eliminate every uncertainty. But what if the uncertainty is essential to making it work? The idea sparked a new wave of experiments. While one team worked on understanding the alien technology, another began developing human approaches to the same problem. They stopped trying to eliminate quantum fluctuations and started looking for ways to use them. It's like trying to swim upstream, Zara observed, watching their latest simulation. The aliens tried to fight against the current of quantum uncertainty. Maybe we need to learn to surf it instead. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Jin-Ho Park, a South Korean mathematician who specialized in chaos theory, noticed something in the alien data that everyone else had missed. The cascade failures weren't random, they followed patterns that looked remarkably like natural systems. "These aren't failures at all," he announced one morning, his usual quiet demeanor replaced with barely contained excitement. "They're self-organizing patterns. The system isn't breaking down, it's trying to find its natural state." Victor rushed to verify Jin-Ho's findings. The mathematics were complex but undeniable. The aliens had assumed the cascade effect was a flaw, but it might actually be the key to making the whole system work. "Think of it like a river delta," Jin-Ho explained to the team. "From above, it looks chaotic, but there's an underlying order to how the water finds its path. We don't need to control every quantum interaction, we need to create conditions that let them organize themselves." The implications were staggering. If they could harness this self-organizing principle, they might be able to achieve what the aliens thought impossible. But it would require throwing out centuries of conventional physics wisdom and embracing a new paradigm entirely. "Earth Command isn't going to like this," Marcus warned, though his grin suggested he found the idea more exciting than concerning. "We're basically suggesting we ignore all safety protocols and let quantum chaos run wild." "Not ignore," Victor corrected, already sketching out modifications to their test apparatus. "Embrace." The aliens failed because they tried to impose absolute order on a quantum level. "We're going to succeed by working with the universe's natural tendencies instead of against them." The next phase of experiments began immediately. They started small, using single crystal matrices to test their theories. The results were promising but inconsistent. Sometimes the crystals would achieve remarkable energy states, other times they would remain stubbornly inert. "There's a pattern here," Zara insisted, analyzing the data from their latest test series. "Look at the successful trials, they all show similar quantum signature just before activation. If we could understand what triggers that state." The answer came during what they dubbed failure analysis theater, their weekly ritual of reviewing unsuccessful experiments over coffee and pastries. Dr. Yui Tanaka, their materials specialist from Japan, noticed something odd in the crystal structure readings. "The successful trials," she said, pulling up the molecular analysis, "they all have microscopic imperfections in the crystal lattice. Not random flaws, specific patterns of irregularity that seem to act as quantum waveguides." This revelation led to a complete redesign of their approach. Instead of trying to create perfect crystal matrices like the aliens had, they began deliberately introducing controlled imperfections. Each flaw was carefully calculated to guide quantum fluctuations in specific ways. "It's beautiful, really," Victor remarked, watching their first full-scale test crystal grow in the fabrication chamber. The aliens sought perfection, but the universe prefers a little messiness. "These imperfections aren't flaws, they're more like pressure points in a living system." The first major test of their new theory was scheduled for the winter solstice, a date chosen more for symbolic value than scientific necessity. As the team gathered in the main lab, Victor couldn't help but feel the weight of history on their shoulders. "Remember," he addressed the group, "whatever happens today, we've already proved something important. We've shown that sometimes the best way forward isn't to overcome nature's restrictions, but to understand why they exist and work with them." The test crystal, a complex lattice of deliberately flawed quantum matrices, sat in the center of their containment field. Unlike the alien versions, which had been geometric and uniform, this one looked almost organic, its structure following patterns more commonly found in living systems than technology. "Beginning quantum field initialization," Zara announced, her fingers dancing over the controls. "Primary containment stable. Secondary fields, fluctuating within expected parameters." The crystal began to glow with an inner light, patterns of energy flowing through its structure in ways that defied conventional physics. But unlike the alien attempts, which had fought to maintain rigid control, this system seemed to dance with the quantum fluctuations, adapting and flowing with each change. Energy levels rising, Marcus reported, his voice tense with excitement. Approaching theoretical maximum, exceeding it, still stable. Victor watched the readings with a mixture of awe and vindication. They hadn't just matched the alien technology, they'd surpassed it. By embracing the very chaos their predecessors had feared, they'd achieved what had been deemed impossible. Send the data to Earth Command, he ordered, unable to keep the smile from his face. And someone wake up Dr. Sullivan's team. I think it's time we started planning the next phase. As the success of their test rippled through the station, Victor found himself staring at the alien text that had started it all. Project terminated due to fundamental spatial violations. Soon, he thought, they would need to add a new line, project completed by species who didn't know it was impossible. Dr. Lucia Reyes stood before the quantum display, her dark eyes tracking patterns that shouldn't exist. 3 months had passed since Victor's team proved their theory worked, but scaling up the technology had proved more challenging than anyone anticipated. The larger they made the crystal matrices, the more unpredictable their behavior became. It's like trying to conduct an orchestra where every musician is playing in a different dimension, she muttered, adjusting another simulation parameter. As the project's lead systems theorist, she'd been tasked with finding a way to harmonize the chaos they'd unleashed. Another simulation failure? Dr. Aidan O'Connor asked, offering her a fresh cup of coffee. The Irish complexity physicist had become her regular partner in late-night research sessions. Not exactly. Lucia gestured at the holographic display. Look at these pattern formations. They're not random, they're fractal. Each failure creates the same basic structure at different scales. The discovery sparked a new line of investigation. Instead of trying to control the quantum fluctuations directly, they began studying how these fractal patterns emerged and evolved. Dr. Fatima Al-Rahman, their chaos mathematics specialist, recognized something familiar in the data. These patterns, she said, pulling up historical Earth data alongside their quantum readings, they're almost identical to weather systems, ocean currents, even galaxy formation. The same mathematical principles that guide natural systems are emerging in our quantum field experiments. Lucia felt her excitement building. What if that's the key? The aliens tried to impose their will on quantum mechanics, but we're letting natural patterns emerge. Maybe we need to think bigger, not just allowing chaos, but understanding how it creates order on a cosmic scale. The team began incorporating principles from Earth's natural systems into their designs. They studied how rivers formed deltas, how trees grew branches, how clouds organized themselves into storm systems. Each pattern offered new insights into managing quantum chaos. The universe, Aidan observed one day, watching their latest simulation unfold, it's like it has its own preferred way of organizing energy and matter. The aliens tried to force it into artificial patterns, but we're learning its natural language. The breakthrough came during an unexpected power fluctuation. A storm on Europa's surface had disrupted their main power grid, causing their test systems to run on backup power. Instead of shutting down the experiments, Lucia decided to observe how the reduced energy state affected their quantum fields. This is incredible, she breathed, watching the readings. The power reduction isn't destroying the field stability, it's enhancing it. The system is self-organizing more efficiently with less energy. Dr. Konstantin Volkov, their quantum engineer from Russia, leaned in to study the data. It's like a river finding the path of least resistance. When we pushed maximum power through the system, we were actually fighting against its natural tendencies. This revelation led to a complete redesign of their power distribution network. Instead of trying to maintain constant maximum energy levels, they developed a dynamic system that could pulse and flow like a heartbeat, allowing the quantum fields to find their own optimal states. We're not just building a machine, Lucia explained to the project leadership. We're growing an ecosystem. Each component needs to be able to adapt and respond to changes in the whole system. The implications extended far beyond their original goals. The aliens had abandoned their project because they couldn't maintain stable quantum states at large scales. But by embracing natural patterns and rhythms, the human team had stumbled upon something far more profound, a way to work with the fundamental forces of the universe rather than trying to dominate them. "Look at this," Fatima called out during one test, pointing to a peculiar reading. The quantum fields weren't just stabilizing themselves, they were beginning to influence surrounding spacetime in ways that matched natural gravitational patterns. "It's like we've created a quantum version of a planetary system," Aiden mused, studying the data. "Each field generates its own gravity well of influence, and they're naturally organizing themselves into stable orbits around each other." The team worked tirelessly to understand and refine this new approach. They developed what they called quantum ecology, treating their technology not as a machine to be controlled, but as an artificial natural system that needed to be nurtured and guided. "The aliens thought they failed because they couldn't eliminate quantum uncertainty," Lucia wrote in her project log. "We're succeeding because we've learned to see that uncertainty as a form of freedom, the freedom for systems to find their own best way of working." As their understanding grew, so did their ambitions. The original alien project had aimed to create a controlled fold in spacetime. Their new approach suggested something far more sophisticated might be possible, not just a fold, but a living network of quantum relationships that could reshape spacetime in response to natural forces. "It's like the difference between building a dam and creating a living river system," Lucia explained during a project review. "The aliens tried to force spacetime to bend to their will. We're learning how it wants to bend naturally." The implications were staggering. If their theories were correct, they weren't just solving the original engineering challenge, they were developing an entirely new understanding of how the universe organized itself at the most fundamental level. "Think about it," she told her team during a late-night discussion. "Every natural system we've studied, from weather patterns to galaxy formation, shows these same organizational principles. What if quantum mechanics isn't just about particle behavior? What if it's the universe's basic language for creating order from chaos?" As if to underscore her point, their latest test crystal began emitting patterns of light that exactly matched the formation of spiral galaxies. The quantum fields weren't just stable, they were replicating cosmic structures on a microscopic scale. "We need to go bigger," Lucia announced, already sketching plans for their next phase. "Not just bigger crystals, bigger thinking. If we can understand how the universe naturally organizes energy and matter at every scale, from quantum to cosmic, we could do more than just bend spacetime," Fatima finished, catching her enthusiasm. "We could work with it, dance with it, become part of its natural rhythms instead of fighting against them." The team began preparations for their most ambitious test yet. But as Lucia reviewed the plans, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of something far more significant than just completing an abandoned alien project. "Maybe this is why they gave up," she mused to Aiden as they calibrated the new test apparatus. "They were so focused on controlling the universe, they never learned to listen to it." "And what's it telling us?" he asked, only half joking. Lucia smiled, watching the quantum fields pulse with their newfound natural rhythm. "That the best way to achieve the impossible isn't to force it, it's to understand why it seemed impossible in the first place, and then find the path that was always there, waiting to be discovered." Engineer Ravi Kapoor watched as another quantum crystal matrix took shape in the fabrication chamber, its structure growing like a living thing. After 6 months of refinement, they'd finally begun full-scale implementation of their new design principles. The Europa facility had expanded dramatically, now spanning several kilometers beneath the ice. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Dr. Yuki Tanaka murmured beside him, her eyes fixed on the crystalline formation. As their lead quantum materials specialist, she'd been instrumental in translating Lucia's theoretical breakthroughs into practical engineering solutions. "It's like watching a forest grow," Ravi agreed, checking the quantum field readings. Unlike the rigid geometric patterns of the alien technology, their crystals developed organic, almost fluid structures. Each one unique, yet all following the same underlying natural principles. The implementation phase had brought its own set of challenges. Traditional engineering tools proved inadequate for working with their new quantum organic technology. They'd had to develop entirely new approaches, combining the precision of alien manufacturing with the adaptability of biological systems. Another anomaly in Section 7, called out Dr. Hassan Reed, their systems integration specialist. The quantum fields are showing unusual harmonics. Rather than treating such anomalies as problems to be corrected, the team had learned to study them for potential insights. Often, what initially appeared to be errors turned out to be the system finding more efficient ways to organize itself. "Look at this pattern," Yuki said, analyzing the readings. "The quantum fields aren't just interfacing with each other, they're creating new configurations we haven't seen before. The system is evolving." This evolutionary aspect had become a central feature of their implementation strategy. Instead of building static structures, they created conditions that allowed their technology to grow and adapt. Each new crystal matrix learned from the behavior of its predecessors, developing increasingly sophisticated quantum relationships. "We're going to need a new term for this," Ravi mused, watching the latest batch of crystals integrate themselves into the larger network. "It's not just engineering anymore, it's more like quantum cultivation." The team had developed what they called seed crystals, small, carefully designed matrices that contained the basic patterns for larger structures. When placed in the right conditions, these seeds would grow and develop, influenced by both their program templates and their interactions with surrounding quantum fields. "Initial growth phase complete," announced Dr. Sofia Torres, their quantum biologist. Moving to integration testing. The integration phase was always the most delicate part of the process. Each new crystal needed to establish quantum connections with the existing network without disrupting the delicate balance they'd achieved. Early attempts had resulted in what Ravi called quantum immune responses, the established fields rejecting new additions. "Quantum coherence holding steady," Hassan reported, monitoring the complex web of interactions. "Field harmonics stabilizing, we're seeing natural synchronization across all nodes." The success rate of their implementations had improved dramatically since they'd stopped trying to force connections and instead allowed the quantum fields to establish their own relationships. It took longer than the alien method, but the resulting structures were far more stable and adaptable. "Remember when we thought we'd have to map every quantum interaction?" Yuki laughed, reviewing their original implementation plans. "Now we just create the right conditions and let the system figure it out for itself." Their approach had drawn skepticism from some quarters. Traditional physicists struggled with the idea of technology that grew rather than being built. But the results were undeniable. Their quantum network had achieved levels of stability and efficiency that the aliens had deemed theoretically impossible. "New growth pattern emerging in the central matrix," Sophia called out, her voice tight with excitement. "I've never seen anything like this before." The team gathered around her display, watching as the quantum fields began organizing themselves into increasingly complex configurations. The patterns resembled everything from neural networks to galaxy clusters, as if the system was experimenting with different natural forms. "It's learning," Ravi realized, studying the data. "Not just adapting to conditions, but actually discovering new ways to organize quantum relationships. We're not just building a machine, we're creating something that can evolve on its own." This development opened up entirely new possibilities. If their quantum networks could learn and evolve, they might be capable of far more than just the spacetime manipulation the aliens had originally attempted. But it also raised new challenges in terms of managing and guiding this evolution. "We need to establish baseline parameters," Yuki insisted during their project review. "Not to restrict the system's growth, but to ensure it develops in harmony with natural laws." The team began developing what they called quantum gardening protocols, methods for nurturing and guiding the development of their growing network without imposing rigid controls. It required a delicate balance between providing structure and allowing freedom for natural development. Think of it like tending a garden, Ravi explained to visiting officials. We provide the right conditions and basic framework, but we let each crystal grow according to its own nature. The result is stronger and more resilient than anything we could design directly. As the network expanded, they began observing effects that went beyond their original goals. The quantum fields weren't just bending space-time, they were creating new kinds of relationships between matter, energy, and consciousness itself. Each crystal matrix seemed to develop its own unique characteristics while remaining part of the larger harmonious system. We should start thinking about applications, Hassan suggested during a team meeting. If we can replicate this on a smaller scale, the possibilities for sustainable energy, computing, even medicine would be revolutionary. But Yuki urged caution. We need to understand it better first. This isn't just a new technology, it's a new way of working with the fundamental forces of nature. We have to respect that. Ravi agreed. As he watched another crystal matrix reach maturity, integrating seamlessly with the network, he couldn't help but feel they were witnessing the birth of something unprecedented, a true partnership between human ingenuity and the natural processes of the universe. The aliens thought they failed because they couldn't control quantum uncertainty, he noted in his project log. We're succeeding because we've learned to embrace it. Our technology isn't fighting against the nature of reality, it's becoming part of it. As the implementation phase neared completion, the team began preparing for their final major test. If successful, they would achieve what the aliens had thought impossible, but in a way none of them had initially imagined. Whatever happens, Yuki said, watching their quantum garden pulse with inner light, we've already proved something important. Sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem is to stop seeing it as a problem at all. The first indication that something had changed came from Europa's long-range sensors. A distortion appeared in space, perfectly geometric in nature, unmistakably artificial in its precision. Dr. Amara Sullivan, who had made the initial discovery 2 years ago, watched as the alien vessel emerged from what appeared to be a controlled spacetime fold. Well, she said, addressing her assembled team, it seems our work hasn't gone unnoticed. First observer HFY materialized in their main research chamber along with a delegation of their species' top scientists. The aliens' crystalline forms caught the light from the quantum matrices, creating prismatic patterns across the facility's walls. Their perfect geometric symmetry stood in stark contrast to the organic flows of humanity's modified technology. You have altered our research installation, HFY stated, their tone carrying what might have been disapproval. Our sensors detected quantum activity that our models indicated was impossible. Dr. Lucia Reyes stepped forward, her natural confidence undiminished by the presence of beings who had mastered interstellar travel. We preferred to think of it as completing your research, she replied. Would you like to see what we've accomplished? The alien scientists moved through the facility, their crystalline forms resonating slightly with each quantum pulse from the surrounding matrices. Their reactions were hard to read, but their intense focus on every detail suggested either fascination or horror, possibly both. Your modifications are chaotic, one of their scientists observed, studying a growth chamber where new quantum crystals were developing. The patterns show no recognizable geometric progression. Look closer, Ravi Kapoor suggested, activating a quantum field display. The chaos follows natural laws. Like a river finding its path to the ocean, our systems find their own best ways to achieve quantum harmony. The aliens clustered together, their forms vibrating in what the humans had learned to recognize as their method of private communication. Finally, HFY turned back to address the team. Our calculations proved definitively that stable quantum coherence could not be maintained at these scales, they stated. Yet our readings indicate your system has exceeded our theoretical maximum efficiency by several orders of magnitude. Explain. Dr. Yuki Tanaka gestured to the central control room, where holographic displays showed the complex dance of quantum fields throughout the facility. We stopped trying to impose order on quantum mechanics and instead learned to work with its natural tendencies. Every seeming imperfection, every deviation from perfect symmetry, serves a purpose. Like the way a tree grows, Viktor Petrov added. Not perfectly straight, not geometrically precise, but exactly what it needs to be to thrive in its environment. The alien delegation spent hours examining their data and observing their systems in operation. Their initial skepticism gradually gave way to what seemed like genuine curiosity. They were particularly fascinated by the way new quantum matrices would grow and integrate themselves into the existing network. You are not simply manipulating spacetime, one of their theoretical physicists noted. You have created a living system that exists in harmony with it. This approach never occurred to us. Perhaps, Amara suggested, that's because you were looking for perfection, while we were willing to embrace imperfection. Nature isn't perfect, it's adaptable. ZYXTAL moved to the center of the chamber, their crystalline form catching and refracting the quantum light in complex patterns. Our species has long prided itself on achieving absolute precision in all things. We saw the quantum uncertainty principle as an obstacle to be overcome. We saw it as an opportunity, Lucia replied. Every quantum fluctuation, every moment of uncertainty, is a chance for the system to find a better way to organize itself. We didn't try to eliminate chaos, we learned to dance with it. The aliens' response was unexpected. Their forms began to vibrate in complex harmonies, creating patterns that matched the quantum fluctuations in the surrounding matrices. For the first time, they were attempting to adapt their own natural resonance to match the more organic patterns of human technology. You have not simply solved the engineering challenge we abandoned, ZYXTAL announced. You have demonstrated an entirely new way of thinking about the relationship between consciousness and reality. This will require significant re-evaluation of our fundamental principles. What followed was perhaps the most unique scientific conference in human history. Human and alien scientists worked together, exploring the implications of their different approaches. The aliens brought their vast knowledge of quantum mechanics and spacetime manipulation, while the humans shared their insights into natural systems and adaptive growth. Look at this, Dr. Jin-Ho Park called out during one session, pointing to a remarkable phenomenon. Where human and alien technology interfaced, new patterns were emerging, combinations of geometric precision and organic flow that neither species had anticipated. It appears, ZYXTAL observed, that just as your systems learn from their environment, we too can learn from approaches that differ from our established patterns. The collaboration led to breakthroughs that surprised both species. The aliens began experimenting with introducing controlled imperfections into their own technology, while the humans learned to incorporate aspects of alien precision where it proved beneficial. The result was a new hybrid science that took the best from both approaches. Perhaps this is the true success, Amara reflected, watching human and alien scientists working side by side. Not just solving a technical challenge, but learning to see the universe through each other's eyes. As the project entered its final phase, the quantum network had grown far beyond its original scope. It wasn't just bending spacetime, it was creating new ways for consciousness to interact with the fundamental fabric of reality. Every day brought new discoveries, new possibilities, new ways of understanding the cosmos. We came here expecting to find evidence of failure, ZYXTAL said during the closing ceremony. Instead, we found something far more valuable, proof that there is always another way to approach an impossible problem. Your species has taught us that sometimes the greatest discoveries come not from imposing our will upon the universe, but from learning to work in harmony with its natural patterns. The Europa facility became the first of many joint human-alien research centers. But more than that, it stood as a testament to humanity's unique gift, the ability to see beyond conventional limitations, to find beauty in imperfection, and to turn apparent failure into unprecedented success. You know what the really interesting thing is? Lucia remarked to her team as they watched the alien ship prepare to depart. They thought they were leaving us an abandoned failure. Instead, they gave us exactly what we needed, a chance to prove that impossible is just another word for something that hasn't been tried in the right way yet. The quantum matrices pulsed with their living light, each imperfection contributing to a greater harmony, as humanity prepared to take its next steps into a universe that had suddenly become much larger and more interesting than anyone had imagined.